Well, another open water season is here. It seems a lot later than usual that we're starting these open water reports. It's May 1st. It's delayed. We've had an interesting spring. I've joked with a lot of people about we're going to go from basically winter to summer at this point. It's been cold. It's been windy. I saw a stat pop up recently that this was the windiest average day we've seen in April. Oh boy, as long as I think they've recorded much of that kind of reporting type stuff, where it was like 19 days where it hit 30 plus mile per hour winds in the month of April. That's crazy. A lot of snowy mornings, a lot of mornings waking up in the 20s. And that kind of takes me to why we're starting these reports May 1st. We've only been out fishing for a couple of weeks here, and it's been kind of all over the place. There hasn't been much consistency. I know a lot of you are not out fishing quite yet. I've answered a lot of questions on the social media pages asking about spring conditions, and a lot of you have said, I haven't gone out yet. And in northern Minnesota, not so much our region here in the Twin Cities, you're still ice fishing. It's crazy to think that on fishing opener, which is 2 weeks away, less than 2 weeks, 13 days away, that I know of some friends in northern Minnesota that might be ice fishing. So not to get off tangent on that, I wanted to talk about what we're seeing right now, how we're catching our fish. We're going to kick off here these open water fishing reports. As you know, I do one every single Sunday. I'll continue that from here on out. And we're going to talk about crappies right now. It's going to be regional. It's going to be specific more to the Twin Cities, central Minnesota. But I think a lot of these tactics and things we're going to discuss over the coming weeks and months can be applied all over the place. So try to stay on top of things in terms of conditions, where the bite's at, what we're catching our fish on, what we're seeing, share some tips, talk about some gear choices, and go from there. So kick things off. Right now, all I'm really targeting for the most part right now are crappies. Of course, bluegills are mixed in. I'm not doing the river walleye thing or going south to chase bass. I'm just not really doing a whole lot of that. I'm mainly targeting crappies in the Twin Cities area. A lot of time on Lake Minnetonka, some time near Chisago, some time out in Clearwater area, Annandale area. And I've seen some consistent patterns developing. Here's one thing I'm going to tell you. On a typical year by May 1st, you're catching fish all over up in the shallows, meaning back bays, back cuts, back channels. Water temps are in the mid 50s. We're not seeing that. A lot of water temps are in the mid 40s still right now. So we're seeing a lot of our fish in that 6 to 12 foot range. They're not necessarily way out deep in the basin, but they're not really way up in those nooks and crannies and back boat channels and harbors and creeks and whatever you might call it. They're kind of sitting in those weeds in that 6 to 12 foot range. And it's really dependent. I always preach this time of year. It's dependent on temperature. Temperature is so important in spring fishing. And temperature means two things, at least from my perspective. Water temperature, which, as we know, when you're looking at your Lowrance and it's showing you what your temperature is, it's surface temp, right? So it's going to be the top few feet. But it does make an impact because a lot of times when these fish move in 4 feet or less, you have more uniformity on the water temperature. So that's one. The other temperature that we're talking about is air temperature. And I mention that because this is the time of year where if you can pick the time of day to fish, I would encourage you to wait longer into the day because water warms up, air temp gets warmer, which warms the water up, especially on a sunny day. Where in the summertime, I'm telling you to get out there when that sun comes up, hit the first 5 hours of light. That's going to be honestly probably one of your better bites in the summer. But right now, there's other factors. Our water needs to warm for these fish to really turn on. And we're going to see a lot change in the next couple weeks, and I'll keep you up to date. So we're seeing water temps anywhere from, I'd say 42 to 47 degrees is kind of what I'm seeing, depending on where I'm at. I haven't seen any 50-degree water temp yet anywhere, which is rare, again, like I said, for May 1st. So I'm finding some days where I'm starting off, it's 42 degrees. That's cold. And I'm seeing water warming up to mid to upper 40s, low upper 40s at best. So how are we catching our fish? So we're still fishing relatively slow. I'm not throwing beetle spins and inline spinners and gaudy plastics and heavier jigs and all that kind of stuff. I'm using 1/32 ounce and lighter. Oftentimes 1/64 ounce, 1/80 ounce, something small or light in profile so that it can fall into the strike zone. Weary crappies come up, they get a chance to eat it. They're not just coming in and crushing. They're not making spawning movements yet at all. So I'm using small hair jigs, a variety of different options. I got my son Jack tying up all kinds of stuff, and he's using everything from VMC jigs to Corey Bechtold's Makula tackle hair jig there. That's pretty cool. Corey doesn't sell them like this, but Jack ties them like that. You can see he ties a little bit of hair in the back of that 1/64th ounce Makula tackle jig from Corey. Catching a bunch of fish that way, but again, the idea is small profile. Hair helps it fall slower. I'm not dealing with live bait. I'm not dealing with plastics on this setup. I'm just fishing a small, thin wire hook hair jig, kind of fall and pendulum into the strike zone. And I'm using two different kinds of floats. I'm using a light slip float, depending on the depth. So if I need to get these fish to go, and let's say 9, 10, 11, 12 feet, I'm using a slip float, and then I'm putting that knot 6 feet or so up, using a tiny little split shot and a hair jig. So I can cast this little fill center slider, oh boy, a long ways. I'm using 4-pound test line. I'm using a 1000 series Shimano. I'm using anywhere from a 6 to a 7.5 foot light action, roughly rod, and I can throw that thing a long ways. And with the slip float, I can get down and set that depth to where I need it. However, a lot of my fishing is done in 6, 7, 8 feet, and if that's the case, I'm not using a slip float. I'm using the rocket bobber, which I've just honestly, don't hate me on this, started using this year. One of my favorite bobber presentations for shallow water applications, anything under 8 feet, is discontinued. So I've had to find myself something new. A lot of my friends that I trust and I fish with have caught a pile of fish on this. So I started using this rocket bobber this year, and I'll tell you what, this is the real deal. I thought it was maybe something gimmicky. It's not. It clips on your line. It's super simple. It sits like this on the water. When a fish bites, it tips up. It's crazy. It really does that. And I was a skeptic, and I started fishing this a couple weeks back. And once I got the hang of it, there's a small learning curve, maybe an hour or two, nothing major. Once you get the understanding of how this thing starts to work, it's deadly. And it casts a mile. I was out casting everybody in the boat on a very windy day, and by the end of the day, I had everybody tied on with these rocket bobbers. This is just the small ultralight panfish version. They make a variety of sizes, everything from panfish and light fish to larger game fish. So again, it sits in the water just like this, and then when a fish bites, it goes boop. So you see that change in color. I like to use a two-tone color. The thing just kind of goes pop, and then it will eventually tip up and go down if you get an active fish or one that's moving with it. But when you get that little light bite and that bobber's floating with that hair jig, and the fish bites it, it just goes, like here's the water line, it just goes, you can see it pop up. And so it's a strike indicator as much as just watching your float go down. So I become a fan of these rocket bobbers. I have been catching fish on the last couple days as well, and I'll continue to do so all week. So cool option. And I can just clip that on any one of my setups, whether I'm fishing the hair. We have been using some tube jigs. Again, something that slows down the presentation. So that 1/32 ounce drop TG, it's a tungsten jig from Clam, brand new, fits perfectly inside a tube jig. I use a variety of plastic tubes. Mr. Twister makes a whole variety of them. All kinds of brands make them. So tube jig and that hair jig has been dominant for us. I haven't bought in live bait yet at all this season. Don't feel the need to. We're catching plenty of fish on hair and plastic tubes. So again, these fish are staging in that 6 to 12 foot range. So if you know where these fish go shallow, we've been out there or fishing springtime, and you're like, I know where these fish spawn here, go way up here. Use that information and then back off of it and think about where they would stage right before they move into those areas. And 9 times out of 10, you're going to get bit. So the crappie bite's been a lot of fun. I plan to fish crappies pretty heavily the next couple of weeks before the Minnesota fishing opener, which is, like I said, 13 days away. Wisconsin's getting after it. You can catch and release bass in Wisconsin. I know some friends that have been doing that. But as far as where we live here, it's all about the crappie. That's what we're chasing. That's what we're having fun with. It's a great time of year to get out and get the kids out. A lot of action. You have shot at a decent quality fish this time of year on the crappie side of things. Numbers, and then selective harvest. Bring a handful home for dinner, no problem there. They taste wonderful out of this cold water, and that's what we've been doing. We've got a couple fish fries this spring. It's been super tasty, and put the kids to work on cleaning the fish and cooking them, and that's how we do it. So there you have it. We're kicking the season off, chasing crappies like we do every year. Water temps, like I said, are still unseasonably cold. I'm really, really, really hopeful that we see some warmer weather here in the next week or so to get things really jump started and go from there. Because I'll tell you what, if things don't get much warmer soon, you may see me targeting big crappies on the fishing opener and letting the bass and the walleye wait a bit, because there's a time of season where these big slabs move up and spawn and do their thing and locate, and you have a shot at a real giant, and it's a small window, and it's looking like it could be literally right over the fishing opener at this point. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep you informed. We'll connect with you every week, and there you have it. So we're kicking off the 2022 open water season reports here. Check back every week. As you know, I'll be tuning in and giving you what we're catching our fish on, what's happening, sending off some questions. I'll try to get them answered if anybody has anything specific they want answered every week on this kind of stuff, and we'll go from there. So have fun, have a great spring, be safe out there, catch a bunch of fish, and we'll see you next week.